Hello and welcome to Camera Review. Today we are looking at Canon's M6 Mark II. It is their latest camera that has just been released, and we are looking at its specs, but more so how it compares to the other cameras in the market and what it can do for your photography and for video. So it is a pared down version of other cameras that have led the market for a long time. But this camera is a camera that is brand new in a lot of respects because it has a very well made autofocus system that has become legendary with Canon, and they are going to be having upgrades, and they have just released upgrade for their autofocus systems for their lineups of cameras. So this one features a very accurate autofocus systems. As you may know, Sony had been leading the market with their phase and contrast detection systems that have been the foundation for their eye tracking and for their autofocus systems that have been very accurate. But what we're seeing is Canon making a very strong comeback by by doing firmware upgrades and for doing eye tracking. This camera has that feature, and it makes this camera a very versatile camera for doing photography as well as video. Now, you may find that there are other cameras in the market that competes with this camera, but for what it is, for if you like the Canon colors and the Canon's accuracy in autofocus, this is the one that will give you that advantage. The biggest side of the advantages is the colors. As you know, Canon has had a long history of producing accurate colors. They're a little on the warm side for most photographers who don't use it, but if you look at it side by side with other photographs from other manufacturers, you're going to see a distinct difference in Canon's colors. What is beautiful is that when you look at it, it's an APS-C type of sensor. It's not a full frame, yet it gives you a very high megapixel, which is 32.5 megapixels. So what that means is that you're going to get an incredible amount of details in your photographs, and that's going to allow your photographs to be able to resolve with high degree of accuracy all the details, and that's what makes a difference. It gives the three-dimensionality, it gives the micro contrast, and as you know, Canon produces incredibly good lenses. So it is for that reason it makes sense to go into a camera like this and use it. You will find that it also comes with a kit lens that is a zoom lens that also gives you the ability to purchase it for a relatively cheap price. This one comes in about $900 with the kit lens. You're going to buy it for about $1,100 in total. So for $200, it is a worthwhile investment. What I also like is that they haven't cut down on the processor. They have DJIC 8, which is their high-end processor that they've used in other systems. For me, that is a very, very important thing, not to cut in terms of the processing power and other things. I do say, though, the buffer is an issue, because as much as the fact that this can shoot 14 frames a second, you're going to be limited by 23 frames in RAW. So what that means is that you're not even going to get a full two-second cycle. You're going to be able to only shoot for maybe a second and a half. And that might not be enough, because you don't want the camera to lock up if you're doing this kind of photography, if you're doing fast action or dance moves or things that are moving in high speeds. You want to be able to capture it. And if your camera goes to sleep, not only do you have to wait for the buffer to clear, you also have to wait for your camera to come back up so that you can continue shooting. So it doesn't end when the 1.5 seconds elapsed. You have to wait for the buffer. So in that respect, I think they could have put a much more powerful buffer in it so that it can transfer that information. Also, on the downsides, I see that they have taken out the 24 frames per second, which should be there, and they put instead 25 or 30 frames a second. Now 30 frames, as you may know, is kind of the broadcasting standards, is the most accepted form when you're doing, for example, YouTube or other type of videos. And the difference between 24 and 30 is the fact that it doesn't have motion blur. It makes the things look more out of reality. It makes things look like too crisp, too sharp, and too accurate. It creates this almost ultra realistic image of watching it on a high resolution TV. For me, that is not the kind of look that I like, but it is for the purpose of putting it online, maybe the right element to use, especially if you're doing things like fast motion and you don't want to have the blur, but you just want to capture every frame in a way that is very accurate and is in focus without any blur. This is the one to get. For me, motion blur makes things more natural, but it is not always the taste for everyone. So beware of that, and something that you need to consider when you purchase this camera. Sony, on the other hand, for example, they have kept the 24 frames on their more expensive cameras for the APS-C, but this one it doesn't have. So for me, I think that's a big drawback. Also, what you'll find is, for example, Sony uses S-Log2, S-Log3. Canon on that side is a little different because they have a very special LUT that they use for their high-end cameras. Like they used to have it on the C200, say 300, which is called C-Log. Now, when you look at this, it's not that way. It is sort of done in a way that only allows you to film it, and then you have to kind of accept what it puts out. It would have been great to have that cinematic quality to it, and Sony on that end has not cut on that one. For example, their Sony A7S Mark II produces the same S-Log, S-Log3 and S-Log2 type of codec, but this one on the Canon side, we don't see that C-Log, that is the C-Log2, C-Log3. For me, that makes a big difference. But as a camera that is designed to film and to be transposed to, for example, a computer screen, it is a great camera because it takes the element of having to do editing out of the picture. For that, I think it's a fairly decent camera. On the other side, if you look at it, there is the ability to do autofocus tracking, which is also important when you're doing kind of video shooting, and it has that flip up screen that is going to allow you to better see and better compose images. For everyone who has used the Canon will tell you that it is a camera that it requires you to understand the philosophy behind the company's introduction of lenses and cameras. Canon has always held things back and they have lagged behind. That's why, like, for example, Panasonic and Sony could get ahead. Now we're seeing something very different. We're seeing Canon doing a catch-up game. And that catch-up game is what is the next competition camera that's announced is going to bring into the market. And I think in a certain aspect, Canon has lagged just enough behind so that the other cameras are slightly better in performance-wise, but not in terms of color accuracy in their processing. If you take out the idea of color accuracy and color, you can find that the specs on other cameras, especially Sony's, is far superior. But this camera is not marketed as per se to be their top end most expensive camera. It is designed to be a camera that is affordable. If you look at the Sony, for example, it sells about $300 more than this camera, so you are getting more features for paying a premium. On this camera, it will serve the purpose for anybody who's doing vlog and be able to record information that is going to be easy to edit, put it on out there as a almost ready to use kind of image, and for most people that is enough. For those who want to use it for photography purposes, it's nice to be able to take this camera and know that you can crop the image if you need to, or you can get 30 megapixels, 32 megapixel image into an APS-C type of sensor that is going to give you much more latitude in post-production when you take it, for example, a raw file into your Lightroom and then you start editing it. You're going to find that the colors are there. Canon is beautiful at exposing for low light, because then you can bring out the details if you need to. Unlike most cameras that require a lot of light, Canon is legendary for being able to do that. Now, as far as the low noise construction in the camera's software, that is still very, very good. It could be improved. I think that the camera can shoot pretty decent images at 3200. At 6400, that is going to have noise, like most cameras do. But for me, what is important is to be able to keep the ISO level as low as possible. And that requires sometimes the ability to use electronic shutter. This one goes up to 16,000. I think that is very, very good. That means if you go out in the bright sunlight, you are going to be able to capture images without having to dial down the aperture. You could keep it wide open, shoot it, and still get great images. And it's also designed to work with Canon's lenses that are going to be very fitting for the system that it's intended to, instead of having to wait for new lenses to come out. And of course, it's designed for the younger generation rather than the most professionals. Most professionals would probably carry a full frame or some other form of camera. This one appeals to the market because it is lower priced camera. It's under $1,000. So for $1,000, you're getting basically a camera that will give you a very, very high quality image, and also video capabilities at 4K. And that in itself is more than sufficient. And also, of course, Canon has a dual pixel sensor, which is very, very important, because that's what made the cameras so powerful in getting accurate images as well as low light performance. So you are investing in a technology that has been proven in other cameras and then brought into this one as a new introduction. Also, if you look at it, it has wireless connectivity, which is wonderful. You're gonna get a beautiful viewfinder that is very, very good, which you have to purchase separately, by the way, because what they have done is they have improved features inside. They've taken out the possibility of having a electronic viewfinder. But if you do get it, it helps you to compose on the bright sunlight. So that's something that I would recommend if you are one of those people that likes to use the electronic viewfinder. On the back screen, you can compose it beautifully, which is the way I prefer to shoot it. But for compact cameras, it is always a matter of user preference. Some people like to use it with the electronic viewfinder, and some people like to use the back screen to compose. Personally, back screen gives you a little bit of a latitude in terms of seeing what you're going to be getting, and not having to put it up your face, and it gives you a better arrangement in terms of the composition, so you could lower the camera or raise it up, and this tilting screen is beautiful for that purpose. Also, you're going to find that the battery that it has gives you about they advertise that 305 frames. I think that will be a number that is rather high, but if you got between 250 and 300, that's more than sufficient for actually going out and doing a shoot for the day. But if you wanted to use it for commercial purposes, like you're going to do weddings or events, you need to carry extra batteries. The batteries are small, which makes this camera light, but that means you have to have extras with you. For me, I think having one extra battery is sufficient if you are going to do most of your photography with it. On the other side, I also like the fact that they have a good screen that tilts up to 180 degrees to 45 degrees. You're going to be able to play with it. It is not the kind of camera that is designed to be used solely for video. It is designed to be used as a photography camera. If you look at all the cameras in the market that are compact, they have put more emphasis on the video and less emphasis on the photography side. Canon basically is a photography company that has gone into doing video or offering video products. Of course, Canon had legendary cameras like the 1DC, and they had their lineup of C cameras for video, for film, which is the C300, C200, C500, which is just announced. These are things that they have had experience with. What we're seeing though on this side of things is the fact that Canon is bringing into the market a camera that is somewhat got room for improvement for the next generation, given the technology that we have today, yet be affordable without having to go up to $1,500 or $1,600 if they had to include more features in it. For me, would it be a worthwhile investment? I think it's a worthwhile investment if you don't want to spend over $800-900, and it's a investment that you if you made it, you could live with it for maybe a year, 2 years, knowing that you're going to get incredibly good images out of it at 4K. Compared to a smartphone, for example, this has so much more that it offers in terms of number of frames, in the quality of the images, details from you're going to get from the photography. Those details that you will get out of this one will never match what the smartphones are offering today. On the 4K video side, you're going to get a very high quality image, because you're going to be able to record audio and everything else if you put all that together, and that is going to give you advantage again in the video side. So it is offering an alternative to, for example, smartphones, and is offering something that is somewhat competitive with what is out there. For anybody else who doesn't need all those features and just needs to use just for photography or just for video, there are alternatives. As a hybrid, this is the camera that would be a very good buy for the price that it's listed at. Now, I put specs down at the bottom of this video description. You can check it out, and you can also find out where you can purchase this camera for a very good price. And also I put links where I have compared this camera with other cameras, and there are links in our description that you'll find for other cameras that are competitive to this camera. So you'll find the links for Sony and everything else, and where to buy them for getting them best price. So if you have any questions, please put a comment in the section below, and I'll try to answer it, and I will see you in our next review. I thank you for watching.